go ahead and get started. So the main thing that I'm going to be using here will be the desktop products. I'm going to close this presentation area. I'm going to be logging in as user Mary, and Mary would be a Office Manager role, so has access to all components and all modules within the results system. The areas of results that we'll be focusing on today would be effectively contact management, because we're looking for duplicates or identifying duplicates within that area. In addition to the contact management menu itself, please note that within results, if you look under the sales and marketing menu, you will see a concentrated area of the list, what we call list management. These are the various pieces or the various modules that work together to be able to identify duplicates, the ability to combine contacts when you find that those records should be combined or one of them deleted. We'll go in details with that. There's also a capability to do a mass update if you need to correct any of that information. So let's first get started within the contacts menu itself. Before we use and in this case, I clicked on Contacts and I went to Manage, which will open for us the Contacts Data Management Center. Data Management Centers and Results, we refer to them as DMCs for short. And so right now we are managing all the contacts data in one big list. A total of 124 records are in the system at this point. Before we go to the Find Duplicates module, which is the module we're going to spend the most time with, along with Combine Contacts, depending on the resolution of your screen, by the way, it might be that not all your menu options on the top of the Contacts DMC are listed at once. So you might click on this drop-down if need be. In this case, I'm minimize the resolution of the screen so you can. It makes it easy for you to see it if you have smaller monitors. But if you are not seeing all the menu options, you're able to click on this drop-down to see the remaining menu options that are available to you. So before we work with the Find Duplicates, let's look at the most common way in which Results protects you from duplicates within the system. Let's pretend that we're going to go here within the Add menu, and we have a reason to create a new contact record for the person by the name of Harold Smith. So I clicked on the Add button from within the Contacts DMC, and I'm going to proceed to write the name of the person. I'm going to keep this transaction simple and proceed to just select the contact type. Let's say they are going to be a regular client for us, and I'm going to hit the Save button, intending to proceed to save this record and be done with the data entry on this record. Results has built-in duplicate checking while you're doing data entry, and in this case, it's not, of course, for sure that it's a duplicate, because there might be multiple individuals, especially with a name like John Smith or some of the other more common names. There might be actually legitimate contact records that you would need to add within the same name. So in this case, what the system is doing is, before it proceeds to save the record and create a duplicate for you, it's doing preventive action here by asking, this is the Harold Smith you're trying to add. It was able to find another record with an ID 1014 of a Harold Smith in the Hanover Inc. in this address. And what you're able to determine right away is whether you do have an actual duplicate or not. So if you do want to proceed, because this is a different Harold Smith out of a different city or state, and you know that they're not a duplicate, you're able to proceed and say, yes, I want to go ahead and save this record. So it does save the new record for Harold Smith, and it creates an ID of 1129 as a new account number for them, because you were able to confirm that this is not a duplicate and proceed with creating this additional record. Now, obviously, if we come in at any point in the future, I'm going to leave this screen as is. As you know, in Results, you're able to open up multiple screens or add as many work areas as you want. So I'm able to go back to the contact screen and click on Standard Search. And I'm going to go and look for a last name of Smith. And I'm going to click on Apply. So you'll notice right now, and it should not be a surprise to you, that we do have two records with the name of Harold Smith, because that's what the system identified for us as a potential duplicate, and we confirmed that it's not, allowing us to add Harold Smith under account 1129, leaving alone the existing Harold Smith under 1014. So this is one example of where Results handles potential duplicates for you. Bring them to your attention while you're doing data entry and maintaining records, and then the user can make a decision at that point whether they have identified a duplicate and they do not want to add the new record, or they were going to proceed like we did in adding the additional record. So this is one component of duplicate checking where the system is doing it for you. Let's go ahead and take another example now. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you, well, you're going to see two things in one. We're going to show you the Outlook integration in some way, and at the same time, we're going to go ahead and intentionally create duplicates within the system and show you how we're going to handle them. So to do this component, or this next approach to dealing with duplicates, is I'm going to go ahead and engage this sample data. So I went in Outlook and created 4 records. As you know, contact management in Outlook it's what's called a flat file. What that really basically means is that if you know 3 people in this company, like John, Jane, and Jerry, you really technically have no other choice but to create 3 individual records for them, because they would have a different email address. In this case, 2 of them, you have the mobile numbers for them. So the bottom line, because it's a flat file, you will create a contact record for each of the entities within the that you know within an organization. So in this example, I'm going to use the Outlook Quick Add. So I'm using 2010 on this demo computer. And so what you notice up here is that if you've installed, we have 2 versions of Quick Add. For 2010 and earlier, it would appear in the add-ins, and for 2010 in the future, we actually have a second additional type. So if you're using 2010 or later, you might be using the newer version of Results Quick Add, which would look like this on your main menu. So in this case, what I'm going to do is highlight more than one record, and you do that when you're dealing with contact records or emails. It's the same thing. You would hold down the Control key, and you will click on each additional contact record you want to select. And because they all have orange on the top, that means all 4 records have been selected at the same time. Now, when you go to your Results Quick Add and click on the Quick Add button, the system will recognize that 4 contact records have been selected, will confirm that for you, and ask for permission to transfer those 4 contact records into Results. So in a way, right now, we're demonstrating one of the components of the integration of Outlook and Results, so that we can create those intentional duplicates and see how we're going to handle them within Results. So the point becomes, do you really want to transfer those? So we're going to say OK. So those of you that might have used Quick Add only on email, you might not be familiar with the contact management. And the way the contact management works is slightly different. So what it does is basically lets you know that there's a screen that's going to come up right now that's going to show you all the records that were imported from Outlook into Results. We're going to click OK. And what you're going to notice is that those 4 records, in this case 4, because that's what we selected, but these could have been hundreds or thousands based on what you're bringing in from Outlook into Results. In this case, all 4 records are now going to be displayed. And what it allows you to do is allows you to see them in context of them being imported at once. And if you needed to make any changes to any of them, you'll be able to make those edits or adjustments here. When you're done, you just simply close the screen. We're going to go ahead and close the screen. I'm going to move Outlook out of the way. And now we're going to go back to our regular application that we were demonstrating from. So now, because we used the Outlook Quick Add to push those records in, if I come in here, and this time instead of using the standard search, which I could, I'm going to take advantage of the browse style search on the top of the screen, which is a quick search area for any parts of the contact or associate records within the Results system. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and search for ABC Corp, which is the company to which all those 4 records belonged. And I'm going to simply press Enter. You'll notice that Results was able to find those records. And by the way, we gave them a special type called test. So you'll know that if you open any of those records and you'll see the contact type, you can see that this is the testing that we're doing around clients being imported from Outlook. So those 4 records are confirmed to be the same records that we just pushed into Results using the quick add. Keep in mind, Results is a network-based application, so those insertion of those records could have been done from another workstation or from your workstation itself, like I did right now. But the point is that the data is always being updated or modified within Results, so anytime you do a search, it's going to be searching the data based on what you have at that time. So in this case, we have a situation where we can see that the data is coming in. These shouldn't be 4 individual records because obviously Jerry, Jane, and John work for ABC Corporation. They're all part of the same company. But those individuals, we had no other choice but to create individual records for them in Outlook. But there's a better way of handling that in Results. And what is that better way? As you know from using Results, or if you don't, you'll learn about it right now, is that within the Results system, you have something called Associates. The Associates tab allows you to create an unlimited number of additional contact records that are a subset or belong to this master account. So in this case, ABC Corp is the primary account. And what would be ideal is that if we can somehow magically take Jerry's record and push it down into the associate record, the same thing with Jane and same thing with John, and then permanently remove them from the contact record so we don't have to worry about creating duplicates for ABC Corp, since it really needs to be one account. More importantly, when ABC Corp is synchronized with QuickBooks later on, we don't really want 4 records for ABC Corp to be created out there. That would be disastrous effectively, because then invoices, quotations, sales orders, payments, whatever you have are going to be all over the place because you ended up with 4 distinct records, customer records in QuickBooks if we went ahead and did the synchronization right now between Results and QuickBooks. So we definitely want to remedy this by restructuring this account into a single account with multiple associate records, so that when we end up with one resulting record, and when that account goes over to QuickBooks via the QuickBooks integration, then only one single record for ABC Corp can be created, and then based on how we set it up, we can even end up telling the Results to create jobs, as 3 separate jobs for Jerry, Jane, or John, but that's a separate, distinct area. You're able to move those associate records in as jobs if need be for identifying job locations or work locations and or shipping locations for the same account. So let's go ahead and then figure out what we're going to do with moving those records under one primary account record for ABC Corp. The way we do that in Results is we can select all those records, and you would go to a module called Combine Contact. Combine Contacts is a very powerful module. By default, it is turned off for regular users within the system, and it's available for administrators. And you're able to go to the user record within Results and give privilege of a person to be able to use the Combine Contacts. And the reason we turn that off by default is that it's an extremely powerful engine where it's able to restructure the way your data is, and a person that doesn't know what they're doing or experimenting can create actually a challenge for you, and there's no undo, there's no reversal of this process. So in this case, what we're going to do with the Combined Contacts is we're going to move the screen up a little bit, expand it so we can see all the fields in it. So just to summarize, what you're seeing up here is the 4 contact records that we somehow want to combine them into effectively a single account record. And if you look at the data in here, we know that this is the record, the surviving record under which we want to build everything. So ABC Corp is going to become the primary account. So when the system tells you to select the primary one, you're going to check this box. What the system now is doing is basically assuming that the others are duplicate and we're going to get rid of them, and this is the only surviving record and the other columns are going to be deleted. Instead, that's not really what we want to do. Because we want to restructure those 4 records into one single record and 3 associate records, you see this option down here that says keep, and if so, what is the associate type you want to use? We're going to say yes, we want to keep this record. Notice how it opens up an area for you where you can type in the associate type, because these could be different things, structured differently or given a different associate type. We also want to keep this record, and we want to structure it under staff, and we're going to keep this record, and we're also going to structure it under staff. They could have been different. They could have been a job site, a bill to address, etc. I mean, there could be anything you want. The associate type is similar to the contact type. It allows you to organize the associates based on the type of record they are. And so you're able to make those selections. And in this case, to summarize what we really are telling the system to do, is we do have a problem with those 4 records. They're all 4 are part of ABC Corp. We want to keep this record, which is the master account that just has the company name. We want to keep also those 3 and roll them in under the primary account and make them an associate record with an associate type of staff. By the way, there's more fields here and towards the bottom, and as you scroll through the data, you'll see that most of the more important fields, including user fields, are displayed up here. I would still typically strongly recommend that before you do combined contacts, you would check towards the bottom of the file, and you would look in the QBI area. QBI stands for QuickBooks Integration, the importing and exporting. And what you would be looking for here is whether this data was ever synchronized with QuickBooks. When you're combining contact records that came in from QuickBooks, you have to be careful, because things in QuickBooks also need to be modified in the same way. We will get to review that later on in today's webinar when we talk about other types of duplicates. But bottom line is that you typically want to review all the information and all the data that's about to be combined. At this point, I'm done. I have told the system everything I need, and I'm going to proceed to click on Combine Contacts. And it's asking you, are you sure you want to merge everything under the 29035? Yes, we are. And the system reports that it's completed with that process. So right now, if I go ahead and do a close of this screen, and let's go and click search for ABC Corp one more time after the cleanup what we just did. And the question, of course, is how many records are we expecting to find when we search for ABC Corp? I hope the answers for you would be 1, because that's all that's going to be left, because we rolled everything under this account, and that's the primary account that is kept. 29035 is the account number. If I open up that record and I go to the Associates tab, how many records are we expecting to see there? The correct answer would be 3, and these are the Jerry, Jane, and John. Each of them have been moved from the primary contact records, permanently moved as an associate record under the primary account. And if I open any of those, you'll see that each of those individuals have an associate type of staff. And as you go from one record to another, you will see the same information that you would have seen in Outlook. So there's 2 of them that had a mobile number. For Jane and Jerry, and John did not have a mobile number, and all the data that was in Outlook is here. So this is an example where we knew that the data as found in Outlook was not sufficient in the way we want to manage it in real life. And we took data that would be the way you have no other choice but to store it in Outlook and convert it into a way that Results helps you manage the data in a more structured fashion as a business account with multiple associate records. And now you're able to synchronize this data with QuickBooks, and a single account for ABC Corp customer account will be created in QuickBooks. And depending on how you set up the associate type, whether those records will go over as jobs or not is a QBI or QuickBooks integration configuration that you will have. But the point is that we're not creating multiple customer records, because really there's only one customer record with multiple individuals we work with there. Here's one more thing that's kind of a good news. We won't do it here because of the limited time that we have, but please also know that Results doesn't only allow you to restructure the relationship between those accounts, but if you change the email address here, whatever that is, or you add a phone number, or you put an address on any of those, any of the changes that you make with those records continue to be bidirectionally synchronized with Outlook. So any changes you make for those records will be totally still respected and moved back and forth between Outlook. Or if you make the changes in Outlook, then you do the import. It doesn't add those records. It always checks and sees whether those records have been previously brought into results. So the bidirectional synchronization is smart enough to continue to integrate and coordinate all 4 records individually, even though they have been restructured in a hierarchy that's appropriate for businesses, the way Results works. All right, the next item that we're going to be covering would be the finding duplicates through this very powerful engine. So one of the main things to note, I'm going to go ahead and close that screen. And we'll go ahead and open, let's do that from the list management, by the way. So we are able to do that from here, sales and marketing. And you can do find duplicates from here. That's one way of working with that. It opens up for you an extra DMC, and then you'll be able to work with that. Or you are able to go to the contact manage, and from here, you're able to click on find duplicates. So one of the things to be aware of is that finding duplicates is really more of an art than a science. And that's because there are, depending on the nature of how data was entered in the system, it is not always straightforward to identify duplicates. So for example, you could have a customer record that was put in, but you only knew their name. Their name was, John Smith. You had another record added in the system, and you added the record for XYZ Corp. And this address is the same, email address is the same, all the information is the same, but you only had a name of an individual in one instance and only the name of the company in the other instance. And so finding those as a duplicate, if you were doing duplicate checking on company name, that would not be helpful because you're not going to find the other record. You do not have the company name in this example. And if you were doing a search or duplicate checking on the first name alone, you're not going to find the duplicate because the other record only had the company name. So that's an example where checking for duplicates based on names is not always what you're looking for. So what do we do for you here? How do we help you with that? If you click on the list of what's available for you under the finding duplicate listing, you will see that the system tries to accommodate every possible, and you'll see some unique scenarios within results dealing with phonetic searches. But effectively what we try to do for the example I just gave you, you could do a search based on or duplicate checking based on the address line 1 and the city name. Or you could have a search by the business phone number. And in that case, you would have been able to identify those 2 records because based on the example I gave you, the address and the phone numbers were complete and the same for both records. We just didn't have the complete name, individual name and company on both of those records. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of those examples. And I'm going to go ahead and start with something simple. First and last name, just basic first and last name. So it will have to be an exact. If you look at the column called last name and first name, what the system has identified for you was a duplicate, I always say potential duplicates, because remember the Harold Smith, this is something we put in there together a few minutes ago. And we know that they're not duplicates because we responded to that prompt and said they're not duplicates. But based on this finding duplicates, it does the criteria where Harold Smith is actually exactly matching those 2 records. So we're going to show them as potential duplicates, and you'll decide if they really are. In this case, also, we found records for Christina. So what you want to remember also in Results is Results has significant intuitive usability within the way the system works for you. If you double-click on any record to look further into Christina's record, this Christina's record, you'll be able to see the individual record. And you can note the information, close it, and then go to the other record and note the information there. As you can imagine, that's definitely not great way of doing work and very disruptive because you're having to jot down notes and hope to remember enough before you open the other screen. So what does Results do for you in this case? Results has the intelligent capability of being able to say, I want to understand from you that you want to work on more than one record at the same time. So I'm telling Results I'm interested in both of those records. And instead of double-clicking on a single record where it will open that record, I'm able to click on the Open button after I selected what I want to open. In this case, what Results does is it will pull both records in at the same time, and it allows you to move back and forth between them. And then you're able to do more searches on maybe invoices or activities and figure out what you have done with each of the individual records so you can decide whether they're truly duplicates or not. So that would be a more effective way of doing it. And by the way, once you find out whether they're duplicate or not, you're able to keep those same check marks and use the combined context approach to engage those two records and further take action on them. Let's go ahead and leave this alone, and let's go to another data management center. What I want to do is I want to keep those open throughout, and what we're going to do is as we go and experience different ways of finding duplicates, we're going to come back and take a look at them. And remember, this is part of the design of Results, where Results allows you to to work in multiple work areas at the same time. Just because you need to do something else doesn't mean you have to cancel everything you're doing. Very much like when the phone rings, you don't clear your desk totally and just focus on one thing at a time. It's not an efficient way of doing it. So the ability to multitask and move back and forth without canceling what you're doing before is part of the a natural way in which Results works with you. So we opened another DMC, and we're going to go to Find Duplicates, and let's go and try to find duplicates in a different way. This time we're going to skip ahead, and we're going to go to company name. And we're going to do an OK search. Here's an example where we found a total of 7 records involved here. Those 2 are potential duplicates. Those 3 are potential duplicates. And those 2 are the potential duplicates for Software USA based on the company name. Let's go and find another way of doing duplicate searches. Why don't we move over to address line and city and see if there's anything in the system that has that. So effectively, it just turned out that they're the same records that we had listed here because they all had the same company information. But the bottom line there is that the way we're finding those records, we're going to select them, all three of them, and open them, is that in this case, the address, line 1, and the city is identical to each of those records. So effectively what we're saying is that if this one didn't have a company name and we just had a person name only, and we're going to now go ahead and do Harold Jim as a display name, what we're basically saying is that this search will still find them as duplicates for you, even though the company name is not complete here, because it's doing the search on a totally different thing. As you can see up here from the grouping area, it's looking by P.O. Box as well as the Bayshore being the city name for it to find that information. Let's go and engage one more additional way. Let's go and search by phone number. And in this case, we were able to find this entity. By the way, notice the names are totally different. So in this case, it's Rich Walker. In this case, it's Drew Gregory. This one has a company name. This one does not. But if you open that record, those 2 records, and click on Open and study those duplicates, you'll find out that for sure they both have the same number. So maybe a little bit more research is going to be required in here as to how come they're sharing the same office number, but they don't seem to have anything else in common. And maybe they're truly need to stay separate as distinct records. There's nothing about duplicate checking that says the system is going to figure it out on its own and it's going to go and remove the duplicates for you and keep what you need to keep. A human has to make most of those decisions. There are a few things that are very straightforward, but there are most of the duplicate checking, what we call potential duplicates, or maybe intentional duplicates. Look at those 2 records up here. One is a vendor, one is a client. And as you know, in QuickBooks, because it puts them in separate areas, sometimes you intentionally make a slight change in the display name, which is equivalent to your customer name between the 2 companies, so that they appear differently, because you can't have the same customer name and vendor name in QuickBooks. It will not let you, similar with the display name here. So we make a slight change in the customer name and the vendor name, but one is a vendor, one is a client. So by all means, you would not want to remove those under any circumstance. They're not to be merged. They're not to be messed with. These are intentional duplicates that, based on the way QuickBooks work, because if you cut them a check, you have to call them a vendor, and if you send them an invoice, you have to call them a customer, and by the nature of it, sometimes your customer is also a vendor, and you have to keep them distinct so that they will correspond to the individual corresponding record, the individual corresponding records in QuickBooks. Let's go and open one more area and do another type of duplicate checking. Home, you get the idea, the home, work, doesn't matter. And then we'll do the last one on email address. And in this case, we could have found this record based on the fact that they're also under the second one, which is a company, right? So we're able to find the duplicates here. But if those companies' names were slightly different, then the ability to search by the email address will have allowed us to identify those duplicates. Because if you look in here, we open those and we take a look, you're able to see that both of those records have an identical email address, and that could be legit, right? So, and it could be that the company names are totally different. The same individual might have more than one company, or work as a subcontractor for another account that you're at, and so their individual information or their email address might be on multiple individual records, and these need to stay in the system. All right, so these are all look straightforward as you learn how to engage those. What you do with them, by the way, is very much consistent with what we did before. But let me show you a couple of unique additional duplicate checking where Results takes advantage of the phonetic search that's available to it. We haven't seen this in any other system, so it's a great tool not only when you're searching for records, but we also leverage that tool for you when you're looking for duplicates. Now, sorry, I meant to open another area. So we took another new DMC. We're going to go to find duplicates, and we're going to go and search for phonetic first and last name, and let's see what it finds for us. So what we're basically saying up here, when you're doing a phonetic name, obviously the ones that are exact match on the name, first name and last name, are going to still appear because obviously they sound exactly the same because they're typed the same way. Same thing with Harold Smith. It's not a surprise to find those within the list, but you might be surprised to see Greg and George. From a Soundex perspective, they're identical because the Soundex engine removes vowels because vowels are not a distinct component of making the name, and so effectively they were able to identify those. How about Murphy, written with a PH versus FY, and with an EY or without an EY, and Fred versus Freddie, and Freddie written in two different ways. From a Soundex perspective, these are identical. They're truly identical. So when you would go and search for Freddie from the name search using standard search and tell it to do phonetic, or you might have seen examples of Jenny McKinsey. Again, Jenny written two different ways, McKinsey written in totally different ways, but they sure sound the same when you would read the names themselves, and that's how this engine, unique engine within Results, the phonetic engine, will work. And so now you're finding more records, and these might be not duplicates at all. You wouldn't know. I mean, the engine wouldn't know on its own. You would need to make a human decision around that, and so you can engage those three, drill in, find out what's going on with them, and then proceed to decide what you're going to do with those records. All right, and the last one I'm going to share with you, we're going to go to Manage Now one more time, and the last one is going to be finding duplicates based on phonetic search for the company. So the ones that we are expecting, well, this is didn't really come up with something superbly unique. These are exact duplicates, but there were slight differences, or someone take a guess on how the name is written. Software USA, maybe they wrote it with a space or without a space. Then the Soundex will find it, or the phonetic search will find it, while the exact search will not. Actually, let me go ahead and show you that because that's an important distinction. So sometimes the person taking the order or taking the information over the phone will create effectively the duplicate unintentionally, and the reality there is that the information itself is going to be searched based on whether it's a phonetic search or not. So in this case, you'll notice based on the change that we made that that record disappeared. And so when you're looking at the various types of searches that you're dealing with, and seeing the type of records that the systems are able to do. It's all because of the various capabilities of the ways that you would want to search for them, and you would never want to settle for just one or the other. You would want to do different experiments so that you're able to find the true duplicates in the system that it would have snuck in if you were only searching by the key company and or the key first and or last name of the record itself. Now, let's say that we want to drill further into those three records, and let's do a combined context on them. And what I wanted to show you here is some of the QBI information. As I mentioned before, oops, sorry, I meant to go to combined context so we can resolve the duplicates. So we're going to basically make an assumption here that those three records are duplicates, and we're going to keep one of them. So let me show you how in the system you're able to engage and work with that. So when you bring on those three records or any other records that were identified as potential duplicates, you would review the information up here. One of the things that you can do is, let's say you decided, you know what, I'm going to keep this record for whatever reason. You decide you're going to keep this, and you're going to effectively delete the data from the other two systems, or the two other records are going to be totally removed. And so what you're able to do before you make a final decision, we use color coding to help you understand how the system is going to make a decision on what it will keep with the final record, and it's going to try to do the best guess possible on what to keep from the other records for you. So here's what I mean. I decided to keep 1108, and we're going to use green to tell you what's going to stay with the surviving record, 1108. And what we're doing here is that you'll notice there's now, the system found that this record, which we're going to throw out as a duplicate, as well as 1110 as a duplicate, it found that there's a Jim Harold as a name under 1109, and it's proposed that it's going to keep it for you. That's why it's set in green. So what we're able to do is we might say, no, we don't want to do that. So you simply, it's trying to be smart and show you the green, but you can basically uncheck it and say, nope, don't want you to bring them in. Or you can say, yes, I do want to bring in this, I want to bring this, and notice because the full name is empty, it's going to fill it in. But notice the salutation. You can say, no, I'm going to let go of sir, madam, because now I have a name, and I want to bring in Jim Harold as a name from here. So notice all those four became green, and the greens here continue, and this became black. That means it's not coming across. You can also see if there's anything else that's left in the final column, and you can keep scrolling down to see what else might be in the system that might need to be preserved. And the other main thing that I'm looking for is towards the bottom. I'm trying to see whether any of those records came in from QuickBooks, and if they did, notice these records, all of those came in from QuickBooks. So, and the way we know that is because you see the imported dates. Mary imported those on June 2nd in 2015. So they are in QuickBooks. So here's something very important to note. Before you complete the work on combining contacts, we're going to throw out 1109, we're going to throw out 110. They were never going to exist in our system anymore. And the bottom line, though, is that if we don't realize that we need to go to QuickBooks and also do the same corresponding merge. In QuickBooks, you can also merge records. It's a subtle feature, not very intuitive, but once you learn it, it's easy to use. And effectively, you're able to do very much what we're doing here, where you're combining contacts and removing the duplicates, permanently removing from the system, and all the transactions under those records will be kept with the surviving record. If you don't go and do if you combine here and you don't do the corresponding combinations in QuickBooks itself, what's going to happen is the next time you synchronize and those records are touched in QuickBooks, they're going to reappear in Results because they still exist in QuickBooks. Results never delete a contact record or a customer record or a vendor record from QuickBooks based on a deletion that has happened within the Results system. That's for your own protection, so that a staff member that has made a mistake or deleted a record in error would not end up having you permanently lose data from your QuickBooks file. So this is something important to do. I'm going to go ahead and do a combined records in this case. I'm going to go ahead and merge them. And what we're going to find out right now is the following. If I go look for 1110, no record is found. That record is no longer exist. If I look for 1109, the record also no longer exists. And if I go look for The first one, which is 1108, then the record of QuickBooks credit card is here. And then any transactions, any activities, any invoices, any of those details down here will also be brought in. Also notice, remember how we had Jim Harold come in from the second column, from the second record? That's brought in. If you look in the full name, you'll see Jim Harold sitting there. Remember how we fixed the salutation also? So effectively, the combined context will listen to every command you give it and is able to handle those for you. And the surviving record, in this case, the other two are permanently purged out of the system, and this is the surviving record in here. We're down to a couple of quick minutes, so what I'm going to do, what I would like to do for you is I'm going to show you something a little bit more detail in how we combine contacts as a way to close the duplicate checking webinar today. So let's take a look at Jenny McKinsey and those two records, and let's assume that they were duplicates. So I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to point out a couple of things for you. If you open up those records, you'll find out, oops, we still have the other records selected, and that's why all 5 showed up. I'm going to remove those 3, just keep 2 selected, click on Open. So here's what I want to bring to your attention. If you go to the activities, you'll see that there are 3 activities under one of them, and there are 4 activities under another record. And I believe we have invoices. No invoices, but the activities will prove the point. And there could be documents, there could be other type of records in here, but I just want to make sure that you'll see what's going to happen when the system does the merging. So I'm going to take those 2, I'm going to go to the combined contacts, and I'm going to combine those contacts. I'm simply going to choose one of them. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to choose one of them. And then notice what the system does. It did not find anything unique on the other side for where there's a field filled in versus what's already filled on the left-hand side. So it didn't have anything else to propose from the right side. But we see value here. So let's go and take our own action in this regard. Notice how there's an extra phone number up here. What you're able to do within the combined context is a very nice feature up here called Edit Current Cell. What does that mean? That means I am able to go ahead and edit this information or access that data. So what I'm able to do then is I'm able to go to the left side up here and put this under home number, click on Edit, and paste it here. And then what I'm able to do, remember the extension is like 10 characters to the right side. What you're able to do over here and say second additional work. Because we brought this in from the work number on the record that's going to be purged, we basically put a marker next to the 202 number that it's an additional work number. Same thing with this email address. So I don't want to lose this email address. What if it's valuable? So I'm going to go over here to the left side and say I'm going to edit to this, and I'm going to put the email address. So effectively then, as you can see from the green, we're going to keep both numbers. So this is an example where you're editing and adjusting on the fly what you see up here. And let's go ahead and do the combined contacts. And basically the surviving record is ID 1002. So let's go and see that in action. So we're going to click on yes, going to click on merge. And let's go ahead and do a standard search. So I'm going to go and search for McKinsey. And what's going to happen in this case, if I click apply, it's not going to find any because of the way I spelled it. So this is an example where in the standard search, you can tell it, I want to do a search on phonetic. Phonetic equivalent of McKinsey written any way you write McKinsey, when you apply, notice only it found it, even though it's spelled totally differently, but it sounds the same. But here's what's important. Only one record was found, and it's the one with 1002 as the account number, because that's the one we told the system to keep. The question I have for you in conclusion of this, if everybody was paying attention today, how many classes would we find, how many records would we find under activities? The correct answer should be 7. Yay, and 7 it is. And the reason for that, 2, 4, 6, 7. The reason for that is because on one record we have had 4 activities. On another record that we merged under and combined into the surviving record, we had 3. And so because the system takes care of all the details for you. If you had invoices, we'll move the invoices. If you had line item details, had payments. That's why it's also important to do the corresponding data. And then if these came in from QuickBooks, you want to do the same thing in the QuickBooks side. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a significant mess where the customer record will come back into the results system and bring with it the data that QuickBooks still has, but you never merged them in QuickBooks. So the bottom line here is that this is a good example where you're seeing how the data is kept. Notice a couple of things. The 202 number came in with the additional work number right next to it, so it explains the fact that this is what this is. Remember how we did not want to give up on that second email address? That email address came in, 7 records are here, so everything is combined into one surviving record based exactly on how you told the system to handle the removal of the duplicate records. All right, we're right on time. Thank you so much for being part of our webinar today. I'm sure that there were many questions that have been answered directly. If you have any remaining questions, please feel free to reach out to support@results-software.com. Thank you very much for your business, and thank you for being with us today. Have a great afternoon.